Good afternoon. We finally get the microphone. So welcome. So a little bit about me. I'm the co-founder and project lead of U-Network. So basically, U-Network is a decentralized protocol for publishing and valuing online content. So people call U-Network or Asia Stimulus or maybe Stimulus Killer. So and for David, he is also the vice of U-Network. Maybe David, would you mind introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, my name is David Bailey. I'm CEO of BTC Inc. We're a media company in the crypto space that really touches a lot of different parts of the media ecosystem, everything from the content creation, distribution, to the media technology itself. And been around crypto for quite a while, so basically eat, slept, breathed crypto since 2012, and I'm just completely obsessed with the potential.
Cool. So probably let's get started with some general topics. So one topic I personally interest a lot is what kind of change will blockchain bring to readers? So what's your opinion?
Yeah, so I think blockchain and cryptocurrency can really change how people consume information online. Everything from what they're consuming, so that means, I think there's going to be, because the economics change, a lot more content created, and so therefore a lot more of a variety out there, much more niche content. I think it's going to change where people consume that content, so it's going to blur the lines of who is and isn't a publisher. And so maybe you'll start reading, Coca-Cola.com/news in order to get all of your beverage news one day. I think it's going to change how readers engage with content. So that means maybe there's reputational information around the publisher, or maybe there's provenance of changes for a piece of content so they can see how it's changed over time. Or maybe there's embedded prediction markets so that they can see what the market thinks the likelihood of certain events are. And then I also think it's going to change how people engage with content from a monetization standpoint. So a lot of the behavior that consumers bring to content, their attention, it's going to be monetized. And so everything from sharing content to commenting on comment to just creating value in general for a publisher, I think they're going to end up getting rewarded for.
Cool. I like the idea that everyone and every institution can be a content creator. Like President Trump is actually a very good content creator. I think one thing he cares a lot about is whether can blockchain solve the fake news problem?
Yeah, so I think it depends on what we mean when we say fake news. If we mean someone taking a fact and saying an incorrect fact, that's binary. I think maybe there's a potential there for some sort of like a curation market for a piece of information or something, its accuracy. If we're talking about, though, I think the bigger issue of taking a limited set of facts and then creating a perspective that's kind of radically different, I don't think it can change that. It's like the glass is half empty or the glass is half full. It's the same fact, but just with two radically different perspectives on it. So I don't think it can solve that issue.
I see. So yeah, actually in U-Network, what we trying to do is we also want to build a protocol. It's very similar to prediction markets. So you can say vote for content. For example, you can vote for content whether it's a fake news or not. And if you are on the right side, you can get the benefits by prediction markets. So yeah, it's kind of where we're trying to do like decentralized governance stuff. So hopefully it can help to deal with say fake news problems. Yeah.
I do think one attribute we'll get that's beneficial is reputation of publishers and content creators and being able to look at the history of content that they've created. So that's one thing that's going to be a big improvement over what we currently have. And then embedded prediction markets is also pretty interesting. So if someone is talking about an idea like who's going to win the election, and what they're saying in their article is radically different than what the market thinks the likelihood of that event is, a reader can discern for themselves, like, hey, I'm reading this article that the market says there's a 1% chance of happening. So there's maybe some element of curation there as well.
Yeah, I think that could be a source of income maybe for those content creators.
Absolutely.
Cool, cool. So right now, like blockchain technology can help us to do the micro monetization or maybe micro metering. So do you think in the future, like readers will need to pay more money to read more content, or maybe readers need to pay more to get some stuff?
Yeah, so we definitely know that readers are willing to support content creators on a micro level with like subscriptions. There's a service in the United States called Patreon that's gotten very popular with the YouTube community. So I think there is some evidence to see, but fundamentally, I think you're fighting against the economics. And users' attention is valuable. And so if users' attention is valuable, it doesn't make sense to charge them money to consume content. It's better to focus on other parts of the stack of where you can either gain efficiencies or monetize content to a greater degree outside of that reader. But it's the eyeballs that you want.
I see. So basically, like readers, when they read some stuff, they actually it's valuable. We can monetize that and maybe return this to those content creators. And also, I think readers, their choice, or maybe some readers' behavior also valuable. For example, readers can help us to identify some good articles, or maybe identify some good piece of information. And this kind of behavior is also actually valuable. We can capture them using like blockchain technology. So that's actually also
absolutely. I think content consumers are going to become effectively ad hoc employees of publishers in the future. As a user, you're going to be able to perform actions that are valuable to the publisher that you're going to be able to share in the monetization. So I think it's the opposite effect of consumers are going to have to pay more for content. I actually think the trend is in the opposite direction. Consumers are going to be paid to consume content or to create content or to engage with content in certain ways.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a good direction. So maybe let's go to some topic related to like content creators. So what kind of change will blockchain technology bring to like content creators?
Yeah, so I'll put in a bit of a plug here for a project that we've built called Poet, which is a network for publishers, content creators, to be able to catalog all of their digital creative assets and demonstrate ownership over those assets, and then trade or license or put logic into certain elements around those assets. This is something that I think is going to be really valuable for content creators because it's a mechanism by which they can gain sovereignty over the content that they create rather than being beholden to the publisher. It also means that content creators are going to be able to sell their content to a much wider audience of buyers, so publishers or international publishers or corporations that are looking to buy content that's relevant to them. And I also think it's going to allow those content creators to keep a reputational history that they can take with them and prove all the other content that they've created and where that content's been published. And it's going to allow them to extract more value from what they create. So I think it's ultimately for the content creator going to enable them to monetize the content they're already making to a higher degree.
I see. Cool. So yeah, Poet is actually a great project, and UNELC is also trying to partnership with Poet.
Yeah, and we have Jared Dicker, who we just brought on about 4 months ago, who was head of technology and innovation for the Washington Post, who's running the project. And it's something that a lot of media companies are excited about because the margins are razor thin in media. In fact, I would say they're negative thin. And so any way that they can monetize or remonetize old content and capture additional value is really interesting. So we've gotten great feedback from Reddit and Gannett and Vice and you name it. The media companies are interested. Yeah.
Cool, cool. So you mentioned about like people are very excited about the blockchain technology. Like, for what kind of value can add to media or maybe content industry for like with blockchain technology?
Yeah. So there's a bunch of different ways to answer this question, but I'll go to the one that I think is most interesting. I think fundamentally, when we talk about tokens, token systems, we're really talking about how benefit is accrued within a system. And so in the analog world, we can think about equity. We can think about equity in a company. We have a bunch of different people all performing different functions. Maybe some of those functions are not directly revenue-generating functions themselves, yet people can provide this service and collaborate as a team because they know that there's some mechanism in order to reconcile the value that they've created and that they're going to be able to ultimately benefit in what was accrued over time. So I think we can apply the same concept to token economic systems. And I think that we're going to be able to dramatically reduce the expense or cost of operating what we now see as a publisher, and take those savings and pass them back to the content creators, because that's ultimately where the real value is. For our media company, I would say less than 15% or 20% of our total cost of operating is actually paying for the content. And we have to have editors and curators of content. We have to have salespeople to monetize that content. We have to have product people in order to build a place for you to come consume that content. We have to have an HR person to deal with all the problems that come from that. We have to have an accounting person, yada, 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 yada. So what if instead we could leverage a token system where we could eliminate some of those costs, and instead content creators could join with other content creators and effectively, almost as if it's a co-op, can effectively form a co-op together underneath a specific property, and they don't have all the administrative overhead that comes with running a traditional company. So a perfect example of this, Reddit is a fantastic platform that sadly a large amount of content that's published on the web is generated from. But there's some perverse incentives within Reddit where the more popular a subreddit is, the more valuable it is to cheat the system or try to socially engineer the system so that you can get value that wasn't really there. You can extract value from the system. There's like a tragedy of the commons problem. When you add a token economic structure on top of it, you now change the economic incentives for people and how they participate. So think Steam. So I have to have skin in the game in order to put content up, and for me to upvote or downvote, there's also some skin in the game activity I have to perform. And so now the economics of the system is what governs the rules. We don't have to have central administrators doing that. So that's a really interesting and compelling concept, and I think something that we're going to see a lot more of going into the future.
Cool. So yeah, you mentioned about like Steemit or maybe this kind of decentralized publishing platform. They are basically an open, collaborative network. So compared with traditional like media company, they are actually a company structure. It's like a tree, like you have a boss, your boss maybe have a boss. So you belong to an organization. But for the like open collaborative network, like maybe say the Steemit community or maybe Network community or maybe Bitcoin communities, they're actually a network. You can belong to one network, you can belong to another network. You are free to move, and you will be kind of incentivized by tokens. This is actually more flexible than wages. So and we also lower like administration cost. So I think in the future there will be more open collaborative network, or maybe they will replace some of the companies in the future.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about how a business is governed, hiring is one of the hardest parts. In a purely open collaborative network, to take your terminology, now we don't have to gateway who the employees are, because there really is no such thing as an employee. You know, if you generate or create something of value, you can capture back the value that you made. You know, we had an interesting conversation backstage, but when you think about these in benefit of cruel systems, you can think of like the first generation business, the family-owned business. The reason it was a family-owned business is because the benefit was accrued and passed via inheritance. So you didn't have to trust the system. You got everything when your pops died. Well, when we moved on to kind of the second generation business, which is the corporation, and people now were able to participate as a unit and share the benefit in equity, we were able to start bringing in strangers, because those strangers could now trust that ultimately there was some reconciliation methodology to make sure that they were getting a fair deal. Now that we're in, let's say, this third generation of business, we can go even further. Rather than just hiring strangers, it can be anyone, and we don't even need to know who you are, and you don't even need to work full-time or part-time. It's work when you want to work. As long as you're bringing value to our property, you can see the upside in that.
Yeah, so like token economy is very important, and maybe provide incentive is also very important. So recently, like Vitalik, the founder of Ethereum, he twisted some of his idea. He believed that some of the maybe direction on the content monetization is actually misguided. Maybe some of the content, it actually shouldn't be like monetized. It should be maybe using some other stuff, say social capital, to try to provide the incentive. So what is your like opinion about this?
So when we say a term like social capital, what we're really meaning is reputation. And when you think about that from the context of what a publisher is purely a brand. That brand accrues reputation over time. That's what causes people to return to it, to consume the content, and to trust the content. So I would agree with him that anyone can create content. Everyone has the tools to create content. I don't think the cost of creating content is going to go up. I think when the Industrial Revolution happened, it caused the cost of artisans, the cost of what they were doing, to go down dramatically. Losing my train of thought here. We're talking
about like content monetization with social capital, maybe.
Oh yeah, social capital. Thank you. So what I think is really important, though, is that social capital, that reputation, has a real world value. And so all of these content creators that are producing the value, they should be able to participate in the upside of the value that their content is. I mean, that's where the reputation is stemming from. So to put this in context of let's say a Facebook, for example. All right, so lots and lots of people are creating content on Facebook. Lots and lots of people operate pages on Facebook that bring in users that then go off through the Facebook platform, and Facebook is able to monetize the lifetime of that user for however long they end up using Facebook. All right, I don't know what the market cap of Facebook is right now, but it's over $100 billion. What if the content creators were able to participate in a pro rata way of the value that they brought to Facebook was the ownership that they had in what was created. So, I agree with his observation, but the social capital is really valuable, and I think a token economic system is perhaps a way that we can capture it.
I see. So maybe let's go with our last topic. So I think blockchain technology can enable us maybe bypass the aggregators. So right now, for example, Facebook is actually aggregator. So do you think we need aggregator in the future, or maybe what kind of role aggregator will play in the future? And also, a lot of aggregators, they're using like AI technology to help us to maybe improve the content discovery. So maybe, do you think blockchain technology will be an enemy of AI or maybe a friend of AI?
Yeah, so there's kind of two different questions in there. One is on the aggregators, or you call them aggregators if they're open. You call them curators, I guess, if they're closed. And it's around the distribution of content on those systems. I don't think that's going away. I mean, that's a value that they bring, is they have eyeballs and readers. I just think the ownership and governance of those systems is going to be democratized and commoditized. In terms of AI, I think it cuts to the root of the question of who owns what data online when it's created. Does the reader own it? Does a publisher own it? Does a platform own it? And that data is unbelievably valuable, because what effectively the Googles of the world and the Facebooks of the world do is they let you create all this content that gives them insight and data around who your readers are and what they're interested in. And then they turn around to the next highest bidder and they take your data and they say, hey, I got a list of all of these people that love this concept or this idea, and you can advertise to these people wherever they go on the web or wherever they go on our platform outside of that publisher. And so there's a massive dilutive value to publishers. So this is programmatic advertising. If you're in a niche topic, maybe you can get $70 CPMs cost per million impressions as a niche publisher. But if you're doing programmatic advertising, you can buy the same readers at $2 or $3 or $4 CPM. So you can imagine how much of a dilutive impact that has when people don't need to go to the publisher anymore. They can just go around the publisher and go to Google, and they can buy the same viewers. So I think that's a huge problem. And I think that if we can put the ownership of that data back into the hands of the consumer or keep it in the hands of the publisher, then it's either going to allow the publishers to monetize to a much higher degree, or it's going to give the users of those websites an asset that's really valuable that they can turn into some sort of financial resource.
Cool. So I think that's all the time we got. And so thanks so much. It's great talking to you.
Yeah,
cool.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
Please consume our content. You can check out bitcoinmagazine.com. We are crypto all day, every day. Thank you.
Thank you.